Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Musical People and Journeys. Oh, avant-garde show. It's our album of the year 2022. The crew are together, sort of, but welcome to the show, William.
Hello.
Welcome, Dave.
Hello.
Welcome, Paul, with Chris on your shoulder because Chris is not well, so he's made a visit with his panther.
Lost in the depths of the desert.
Yes. Indeed. And welcome, Rock Chick Trish.
Hi.
And standing in for Ian, we have Slashy Crew Rocker. Hi, buddy.
Hey, what's up, guys? What's up?
What's up, indeed? Now, there he is. So, unfortunately, we use Teams, so people are going to come in and come out. They're not talking on the video, so apologies for that. But hey, there we go. That's how we roll. And hopefully, as we mentioned, Chris, bless him, he's down with a really bad cold and coughing and splutting again, and having a rough time of it. So we wish him all the best. And Simon is having some technical issues, and hopefully might join us at some point during the show. But we're going to rock on with today's show, which is our album of the year. So we shortlisted 12 albums, and we're gonna reveal our top 10. And basically, how we've done that is that we have secretly voted for our top 10 albums, and a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest type of thing, I've awarded 12 points for first, and then we go in to reveal our album. So, who was the short list? Well, in no particular order. Well, there is a particular order based on the Hall of Fame, as we've kind of voted for our albums got to go through the year. So we have Volbeat with Sermons of the Mind, Visions of Atlantis with Pirates, Civil War and Invaders, Shinedown and Planet Zero, Nordic Union and Animalistic, Hellstorm and Back from the Dead, Goodbye June, See Where the Night Goes, Ghost and In Peru, Five Fingered Death Punch, Afterlife, Sabaton, The War to End All Wars, The Who, The Rumble of Thunder, and Blind Guardian, and The God Machine. So, before we kind of drill in, I mean, those are 12 amazing albums, really. And we'll go into a bit more depth about. I found it incredibly difficult to rate them all. I know a few of you did, but I just wanted to start asking any honourable mentions, any albums there that you would have, that you kind of would have. I had you give a 5 to, and I'd like to have seen them. For Chris, for example, he gave Reef a 5, and that was his only 2 5s he gives through the year. So I would imagine he would have probably loved to have seen in them. So how about you, Trish? Was there anything in there that you'd like to give an honourable mention to?
Yeah, I said I would like to sing Battle Beast in there.
Yeah.
Fozzy and Eric Gales.
Of which you've seen all 3 in concert this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, how about you?
I would have liked to have seen MSG in there, but I mean, it weren't everybody's cup of tea. And that's it, really. Probably Battle Beast. I would have liked to have seen in there as well. So yeah,
they were just outside the Hall of Fame, weren't they? How about you, Will?
Oh, what a nice shirt, Trish. There's a few that I would have really liked to see. I think Alter Bridge should have been there.
Definitely.
Totally not biased that I saw them live last week and they were incredible.
Yeah.
No bias at all. Again, purely genre bias. I Prevail, I think, was a beautiful, incredible album that should have been there, but obviously was far off the the magical number.
The screamo rating let it down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the aggression and those are the 2 main ones that for me were my other highlights this year.
How about you, Slashy?
Well, there's only one for me. There were many bands, albums I loved, absolutely loved, and many 5s given. But the one that stands out was the one I agree with Paul and Trish. Yeah, it was Battle Beast, man. Battle Beast. They were fantastic live as well. And a nod to Eric Gales. What a concert. What a live! What a blues rock guitarist extraordinaire.
Indeed.
Shame he couldn't be on the podcast.
And how about you, Dave? What about you? Is there any albums
yeah.
that?
Well, I agree with the Eric Gales. But I would have said as well, Billy Talent, Crisis of Faith. I would have had that in there as well.
Yeah, that was just outside, I think, as well, wasn't it? So, I think the only one for me would have been Scorpions. Really, that is such a great album from such a great band. Really, that I would have loved to see Scorpions in there. Only Slashy Crew let us down there with a poor boat. Otherwise, we would have been up there. So, because I was a rock believer, okay, and I wanted to believe on that side of things as well. So, hopefully, Simon's hopefully going to join us. But once he appears, we can kind of ask him there. And now, I have a philosophy in life: a good stat makes for good conversations. So the kind of next thing I want to kind of go through is very interesting in terms of we looked at our overall rating and we reviewed somewhere in the region of about 126 albums. So you know what? These 12 albums, across the board, have got to be good. I mean, that's a lot of albums. So we rated our stuff from 0 to 5. And so there was some very... So I did a bit of data analysis in terms of like who give what out there. Now, Paul, I'm going to start with you because you didn't give 1 5, not one, and that was we mentioned this right through the year because of the Volbeat saga where you give Volbeat 4.5 and then couldn't get yourself to give a 5 because it would have been better than the Volbeat, and you regretted giving Volbeat a 5, not a 5, I presume. So you didn't give anything a 5.
No.
Do you regret that?
No.
You are like the Craig Revel Hall of our crew, aren't you?
Well, ironically, I've only given one person 5.
I know that was back the previous year, wasn't it? With Daughtry.
That was the previous year's.
But we only had a few months of giving rating. There's only about 3 months worth of ratings that we give for that one. So anyway, but you also only give 1 0, Paul. Do you remember who that was for?
It could have been so many.
I know, right? But it was a bit of a surprise, actually, considering the trash that we voted for. But the only 0 was for Miles Kane.
Oh yeah,
that was your only 0.
I hated it.
Some of the stuff we did listen to is quite surprising, but then it could be in the moment from that side of things as well. So
I think it was because it was such a disappointment that you'd Miles Kane stuff, previous stuff, and I was really looking forward to it, and what I got was just slop in the end of a bucket. Rock and roll blues, wasn't it, from that side of things as well. So, but there's no surprise who give the most 5s. Who give the most 5s was obviously Trish. Trish, you give 20 5s. 20. Which turns out and you reviewed about 80 albums in total, right? The albums, which means that you give 20% or 25% of the albums you rated, you give top marks for. Which is,
I respect it.
Which is not bad. However, Trish, you only give 2 0s. Do you remember what your 2 0s were?
No.
No? Well, I did mention one of them. So Lamb of God.
Oh, Lamb of God.
Lamb of God, which was really screamo.
Crime.
And the other one was Papa Roach.
Ah, yes.
Papa Roach,
yes.
Which I found quite surprising because I thought half that album would have very much been your kind of cup of tea, really. So, anyway, so
I need to be less frugal with my 5s next year.
You do. Will, you were one of the most interesting ones because I'll tell you for why.
Wild card, baby.
You love the number 11, Will, because you give 11 0s, 11 4s, and 11 5s. Which
what can I say?
which is nothing in between at all. And actually, in fairness to Paul give either a 2 point. His ratings from 2.5 to 4, 14, 17, 13, and 16. There was very little elsewhere. It was either Paul was very much a kind of in the middle side of things as well, which is very interesting. So
I always say, I really like what I like. And I really, really don't like the things I don't like. So
very
if there was ever more more obvious evidence of this.
But it's utterly impossible for me to actually go into to some examples of that. So, Dave, you only give 2 5s. Do you remember what they were?
Yep. It would be Volbeat and Shinedown.
It would have been absolutely both of them in our top albums. You give 3 zeros, and everything else was you did kind of have that mid range of 2 to 3. A lot of your votes were in that one as well. But Ian Stokes Slashy Crew, you give 12 5s. So that was the second highest of 5s from that side of things, which is a 20% of Ian's album reviews were given a 5. So, but he likes what he likes from that man.
I think that also says that if that's 12, that if you listen to this podcast, one album every month, you're going to really enjoy.
Absolutely. But you give 3 zeros. Do you remember what they were?
So I think there were 2 in the same episode in November, and I can't remember what the other one was.
No, they weren't actually. They were fairly spread out through the year.
Okay.
Yeah, Block Party.
Yeah.
I have the T-shirt for.
I struggled.
0. Definitely Arctic Monkeys.
Yes.
Fumas obviously give. Fumas give that one. And the other
that was the one in the last episode.
And the other one was a really I thought, a cool prog rock. But no, I love prog. Pale Waves. You give a 0 to Pale Waves as well. But there we are. So
struggled.
But I don't know whether Simon can kind of hear us. But Simon, he give 9 5s and 4 zeros, and his is very interested in terms of his zeros. And Simon, can you hear us? Are you able to dial in, or are you still not working? You have 3 seconds to answer. Failed. He's listening in. He's listening in. Okay, so he did Goo Goo Dolls, Kasabian, Marillion, and Elvis Costello was his. I think a few of us did our zeros from that one. Now, interestingly, before we delve in, our average scores: Trish 3.6, me 3.3, Ian was 3.1, Paul was 3.06. So Ian and Paul's average ratings were very, very similar. Now, we all know Will and Simon have very similar tastes. Very similar tastes, right? This was borne out by their scores, because Simon was 2.79 and Will was 2.78. So,
what can I say?
I know, right? How bizarre is that? Dave was
Musically the same
2.4, and Chris was the miserable git of the party with an average rate of 2.2, which was kind of interesting. Anyway, enough of stats. There we go. Very, very interesting. And we'll see what next year brings, and whether we'll be tougher scoring or not. So okay. So,
Nigel, can I just say, you haven't said who you gave, how many 5s and how many 0s you gave,
have
and
I
what
not?
for.
Have I not? Well, that's very.
I don't know how you missed yourself.
How did I miss out? I
Outrageous.
reviewed.
The Podfather.
Well, I know, the Godfather. You're right. Well, I reviewed more videos than anybody, or more albums than anybody. I only give 10 5s. Bizarrely, I only give 10 5s, and I only give 1 0, and that 0 was to Monuments. So, which was a description of my utter screamer, where I mean, I can tolerate some screamer, but I couldn't tolerate that particular album. That was just a nightmare. And yeah, I only give 7% of my albums would give it a 7. But then you would expect that, because I obviously listen to a lot more albums. So yeah, that was mine. And yeah, and I only give 10 5. So there we go. So let's crack on then. Let's crack on with the countdown of our top album. So the first thing we're going to do is to reveal the 2 albums that, out of the 12 that we did, that didn't make the top 10. Dun, dun, dun. So the 2 albums that didn't make the top 10 were... Do you like the pause for effect, guys? Wasn't it cool? Anyway, there we go. Was Civil War and Intruder, and The Who and The Rumble of Thunder. So those are the 2 that didn't make our top 10. Now, apart from Chris and The Who, nobody put any of those 2 albums in their top 5. So there's no surprise there. However, they did score well. They both scored over 20 points, so I think they scored well enough to have justified and earned their place in that shortlist status for sure. So I think that there was. I don't think there's anybody really in that list that really we can drill into from that perspective. We've got a lot to talk about in the next top 10. So we're going to move in. We're going to move on now to our first album and our top 10. And I can reveal that the album in 10th place was, with a score of 27 points, so it's very close actually, was Blind Guardian and the God Machine was in 10th place.
That is a crime.
Well, interestingly, you say that. So the two highlights here really was that nobody other than Will and Simon put it in his top 5. So Simon, if he can, somebody really interested to hear his thoughts. But Simon voted this in his second place, and Will did have this as his fourth album choice from that side of things as well. But yeah, I mean, and just to say, it actually. So I'll reveal now our 9th spot. So our ninth album, which actually was the same amount of points, but actually received somebody's top votes. So in 9th spot was Ghost and In Peru. So Trish, this was your top album. Why was this your top album, Trish?
Just listening to it just gives me goosebumps, and I think if an album can do that, then it's something special. And yeah, I just absolutely loved that album.
Why do you think, out of all the albums in there, why do you think that this gives you goosebumps more than anything that was in that?
I don't know. It's just the music to, I can't even remember which song it is. It just sort of starts off like tingly, the music, and yeah, it just gives me goosebumps. Gives me goosebumps just thinking about it.
Now, Ian, or Slashy Crew, you did have this in your top 5 as well. This was your fifth. This was your 5th choice album. Disappointed that it finished no more than higher than 9th, or roughly where you might have expected it to be?
I think I'm a little bit disappointed, but it comes down to genres. I see the pain on Dave and Will's face when the bands they love and have passion for end in a place unfamiliar to their expectations. So yes, I'd liked it to do more. We had the opportunity to see Ghost, but it was during an event, and we just time wise and tiredness, it was we just couldn't fit it into the schedule. But I would have liked to see him do better than 9th, but being fair, with
it is a very good album. It is a very, very good album. Now, Will, you listened to In Peru for the first time. It was an album that you hadn't reviewed. Well, you and Paul, so we'll come to it in a minute. So I'm not sure if this actually made your top 10 or not, but
it didn't.
No, not your cup of tea.
There were 2 albums that when I just listened to, I couldn't get behind at all.
Yeah. Which
was obviously Ghost and one other, which will remain unnamed until we get to it.
Yeah.
But it's just, I just couldn't get behind it. The music wasn't my kind of thing. This is very much a me thing as well. Their general aesthetic of the band just reminds me of Powerwolf, and I'd much rather listen to Powerwolf. Religiously kind of metal themes. Just don't. Nah. You can't have the same kind of theme as Powerwolf, and then expect me to not compare them.
I don't know. I wouldn't compare Ghost with Peru, but yeah, I mean, it's all a matter of taste, isn't it? Paul, what about you? This is the first time you listened to In Peru and Ghost.
No, I had listened to them.
You had, right? You weren't in the rating for the show then, but
no,
yeah. So,
I had listened to them because it was one of the fastest selling heavy metal band albums of all time. Definitely of the year, but of all time, I think. So it was. So I checked them out, and yes, I did like a lot. I loved a lot of the songs on the album. But for me, and the problem is when I went to review it for this show, and for the voting, it went up against a pretty stellar competition, and the interlude spoiled it for me. The interludes just, for me, if they weren't in it, it would have been in my top 5, but it just couldn't get past some much better albums in that respect.
No, I mean, look, we're getting into, for me in particular, once I got, I picked my top 2 albums, and then the next lot of albums, it was so hard. It was so hard. You were looking for microcosm of differences between and how you liked them. So yeah, Ghost was in the lower half of my towards my bottom of my top 10, but I still love the album. I still absolutely love this album. So okay, now 8th place. So our 8th album, and it was only it was on 29 points, so it literally was ahead. And this is how close it was. It was literally only a couple of points ahead of Blind Guardian and Ghost. So in 8th place is Shinedown and Planet Zero, or Dave. Dave is wincing because we know we're coming to Nick. Dave, and this is interesting that we all, apart from 2 of us, only 2 people voted for the same album. All the rest of us picked different albums. And Dave, Shinedown was your number 1 album of the year. Yeah, I mean, it's still a cracking album.
They all are. They all are, in fairness.
So Planet Zero, tell us why was this your standout album of the year?
Well, it was interesting because the first time I listened to it, I'm not sure I actually enjoyed it. I kind of listened to it and I was just kind of like, eh. But after I turned it off, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. There was something about the album that was just like, I need to go back. I need to listen to that again sort of fairly quickly. And every time I've listened to it since then, it's just grown on me more and more and more. And there's just something about it, something about the themes that they're singing about in the album, something about the way that stylistically they change quite a lot, just really hits the mark for me. As I say, first time I listened to it, I really didn't think it was going to have that effect. But yeah, I didn't think anything was going to be, what I think is probably going to win, which we'll get to later on. But yeah, incredible.
It is interesting because Paul, Shinedown was in your top 5.
Yeah,
it was in your 5th place album. It was in your 5th place.
It was a very, very solid album, and the more you listened to it, the more you enjoyed it. If they'd sent me the graphic novel, I would have probably understood it better than I did. But apart from that, it was a really, really good album, and stood against a lot of the competition that was on review. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a cracking album, and people think it's a concept album. It really isn't a concept album per se, because it is based on a Planet Zero and the rules that you set there, but there isn't. It's a song about the planet and all the rules within the planet, rather than a storyline through it. But I might be wrong on that one. But
it's one of those. It's one of those albums. I'll be interested to see how it ages, because there's a lot that they sing about in there that's very, very poignant to what was been going on in the world the last sort of couple of years. As I say, later on, sort of 10, 20 years down the line, when people are listening to it that weren't necessarily aware of what was going on, sort of these last couple of years, will it have the same effect? I don't know. It's an interesting one.
I think so. So, Will, you listened to the album for the first time, or you might have listened to it, but you hadn't rated it in the show. So, what did
very first time?
What did as first time listening? What did you think of it?
Yeah, it just like you've kind of said, it's as an album, it was a solid album, but again, there's nothing in it that was really special for me. Nothing sort of stood out that could compare with everything else that was here.
Yeah.
Like, again, there's slight genre bias in it with me that, obviously, as you well know, I'm more into the heavier side of things. And when you look at everything else that was here for this show, it couldn't compete with things like, Blind Guardian.
Absolutely. And of course, and Ian, you listened to it for the first time as well. So, stand out for you, good album. I think it got into your top 10 for sure, didn't it?
No, I don't think I did.
Oh, really?
No. No. Are we talking about Shinedown?
Yeah, Shinedown, yeah.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
It was quite interesting what Dave said there. Was I think it was in RPGs you get books on lore, and if you're really into it, you can really get into it and gain a lot from it. But it doesn't take away from the gaming. And I think there's folklore, that they're talking about, and folk music is definitely one thing you like or you don't. And I think there's some synergy between those three words that leads to where we are thinking on it.
Well, I think a lot of people had it in their lower, like from about 6th to 9th, and so it generated. It was picking up kind of points without getting to people's top 5. Okay, right, we're moving on. In our 7th place on 34 points, 7th place was Goodbye June and See Where the Night Goes. Now, 3 of us had this in our top 5. Chris, who unfortunately not here today, he had this as his number 1 album. Obviously he's not here, but obviously he was had his headphones on his Black Panther, riding across the desert on See Where the Night Goes. I had this in my 3rd place, so this was my 3rd favourite album. And Dave, you had this in your 4th spot. For you, mate, why this album in your top 5?
To be honest with you, I mean, this one, Ghost and The Who, and another one which we'll get to in a bit, they were 4 albums which, to be honest, they were in the middle of the top 10, and it was kind of like, I don't know what order to put these in. And this one was just, I think I put as the head of the 4 because it was just the one that I'm most likely to go back and listen to. It wouldn't get any higher because, unfortunately, there are those obvious comparisons to AC/DC, which I think we covered a lot when we were talking about the album at the time. But I mean, it's a very solid rock album. I think it's, it deserves its place in the top 10 for sure.
I mean, listen, I absolutely adore AC/DC, one of my all-time favourite bands, and yes, there are some parodies to there, but this was a standout enough to, yes, this is the same genre, yes, he's got a similar voice to AC/DC, but they had their own take and they had their own stuff, and it is, for me, I think it's sometimes you've got to be in a mood for an album. For me, I can just put this on and it lifts me up, and it takes me somewhere, and I absolutely adore this album. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So I think it deserved it now, and a lot of people liked it. Generally a lot of people in their kind of top 10s, and they really did like the album. So I say Chris, one of his only 5s that he kind of gives. So no surprise there that he rated this of his top album. So. Right, we are now getting to our top 5, but first of all, our 6th favourite album, and there's going to be tears. Yeah, I'm just about to warn you. There's going to be tears. In 6th place, on 42 points, it was very close, was Sabaton and The War to End All Wars.
It's okay, people are allowed to be wrong sometimes.
Well, obviously 4 people had this in our top 5. Will, you rated this as your number 1 album. Now, we've heard you exonerate the virtues of Sabaton on their album, and here's your chance again to exonerate why this was your number 1 album.
I'm heartbroken by this. First, my heart was broken by Nathan's poem all those months ago, and now it's been smashed again. 6th place. I mean, again, I can understand why people may not like it. I was speaking to Simon before, and he obviously sounds a massive Sabaton fan as well, and he couldn't rate it as high because for him it's not as good as all their previous work, which I get, but it's still such a fantastic album. The stories they're telling in it, for me, all the songs perfectly encapsulate the stories they're trying to sell. Trying to say, Unkillable Soldier is this like super fast beat. You can imagine it's him running around the trenches, zipping around all the time. Stormtroopers, obviously, again, super fast pace. You close your eyes, you can imagine watching these German troops charging across the trench line. Dreadnought, again, this slow paced thing. It sounds like a fleet of dreadnoughts would be sailing across. It's such a fantastic album, and I'm sad.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. it was so difficult for me to and I put it in fifth place, but I echo every one of those in terms of and listen, you know, there's a couple of albums that Nathan slaughtered for no good reason to slaughter them, and this is one of them. And I if Civil War was in top list, I had to put Sabaton in there because, as we've proven, you know, Civil War didn't even get in the top 10. Sabaton, sixth place, you know, not far off the top 5. Really, it is an outstanding album in terms of power metal, etc. And its lyricism and its musicality. It is just a phenomenal album, absolutely phenomenal album. So,
Nigel.
yeah,
I've got to say. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, please, Dave.
Oh, I was going to say, I might have had this in ninth place, but we actually finally managed to find a power metal album I actually enjoyed, because I really did enjoy this.
yeah.
I was going to say as well, Dave, is Will, Sabaton might not have won, but you've converted half of us to power metal.
Yeah, you've led us down the journey. Paul, this was fourth place for you.
Yeah, I love the Sabaton album. And for a long time, apart from the obvious one, it was up there for the thing that, you know, for the top award, my vote anyway. However, when I reviewed all the albums that were on our list, it just came up a bit short. You know, I listened to it like 5-6 times when I was reviewing it, but when I went back to it, it just didn't have that strength compared to some of the albums that we were reviewing. And yeah.
Trish, you also had it in your top 5. You had it in fifth place, the same as me.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, with my top 5, that changed quite a bit, and it was really difficult to decide what place to put the 5 that are in my top 5. But yeah, Will, definitely, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be the power metal queen that I am now with you.
No, definitely. You've definitely led us. You're on mute, Will.
Getting it's a slow conversion, but I'm slowly getting you all there.
Oh, definitely.
April next year.
Yeah, we're all seeing Sabaton next year. We're looking forward to that concert. That'd be amazing. Now, we move on to our top 5 albums. Now, it's very interesting because the fourth and fifth were actually joint on points. Both had 46 points, but the one that got fourth had more second places. So on a tie break, it was on a tie break that went. But in fifth place, and justifying its position in our albums, was Five Finger Death Punch and Afterlife, which got 46 points. Now, interestingly, the top 2 albums had 6 people in their top 5. This also had 6 people in its top 5. So, which was quite amazing. Nobody, though, give it first place, but there's there are 3 people put this in their top 3 albums. Trish, Simon, and Chris. We can't get the other 2, so we're going to Trish. Trish, Five Finger Death Punch. Then this was your third place album, but didn't make the Hall of Fame because basically Nathan had a spurious reason as to why to give it 0 points, which is absolutely ridiculous because it is an amazing album. But yeah, third place for you.
Yeah, I mean, Five Finger Death Punch their music wouldn't be something that I would normally pick up and listen to. So the fact that, you know, it was an album that we reviewed was an opportunity to listen to it. It's definitely a lot heavier to what I would normally listen to, but bloody hell, it was a brilliant album. Just, you know, some of the lyrics, some of the music. Yeah, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I give it my fourth place, and the reason I love this album was it's light and dark, it's shade. It seemed to pick a lot of genres, from that screamo to power metal to ballad metal to it had a little bit of everything. But what I loved about it is that it did everything so well. And there were so many great songs and great tracks in that album, but it ebbed and it flowed and it changed. And yes, there was one particular track I think I did skip because it was a little bit too heavy. But even the screamo elements, the screamo, what they did was much as try to accentuate the record rather than dominate the record. And there was only, and they were few and far between. But what they did, you got to recognise they did that really, really, really well as well. I love this album. I loved it because of its sheer diversity, from being really heavy to being really light. I thought it was an absolutely terrific album. The other two that had in the top 5 was Dave and Will. So Dave, this was also in your top 5 albums.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that I hadn't listened to before, sort of listening to for the last few ones of this. And I've got to admit, they were a band that I'd only heard sort of fairly poor things about. I'd never actually listened to them myself. And I can't understand where any of that opinion was coming from, because I thought it was great. You know, it had as you say, a perfect blend. You had your melodic parts, but you also had your parts where you had some energy and some anger in there, and it just worked brilliantly together. It was a really, really good album. It's one that I've listened to multiple times since.
Will, your top 5?
Yep. I also, well, as I said when we reviewed it before, I've listened to Five Finger Death Punch for years and years. They're one of the earliest bands that I got into when I started getting into proper heavy stuff. And I still find my favourite thing of Five Finger Death Punch, as I've said 1,000 times, it's just about a really angry man who's actually really sensitive, but he's really angry and he's really sensitive. He's angry about how sensitive he is. And that sums up all of their songs perfectly, and I love that.
Will, do you think this is all about you
album.
then?
Oh, details. No.
Oh, the irony of you saying that, Nigel. The irony.
Ian, while we got you, Slashy, you listened to this album for the first time, and you and Paul both listened to the album for the first time. Well, Trish also. This was a new album for you as well. But what did you think of it?
I really, really enjoyed the album. I'm gonna channel my inner Ian here, and I really enjoyed the album. For me, the genre wasn't as strong as others that I like. So it didn't do as well in my top 10 as perhaps it could have done, just because of the volume of other genres, and that'll be revealed later. Interestingly as well, going back to Will's other passion of Sabaton, a question perhaps for another podcast is, when you're so passionate about one band, how do you discern and be truly open-minded about other bands with similar genres? I find that really hard. When someone sounds like Battle Beast, I'm like, well, how do I listen to this with an open mind and judge fairly?
I think,
so maybe not a conversation for today, but
well, no, I think it's a journey that we're all on, isn't it? You know, the whole point about doing this is opening my mind up. I would not have listened to half of these. I had to listen to screamo, and but you accept as a person that you are going to be open to new music, and Anyway, we can kind of move on from that way. So in fourth place, it was on the same amount of points, but it only had 3 people in the top 5, but a couple of people give this their second places. So, which was, and for me, I think one of the discoveries of the year, which was Nordic Union and Animalistic, because my expectations were very low, and I absolutely, I thought this was a terrific album. But Paul and Ian, you both made this out your second place. Let's start with you, Ian. Well, we've got you then. So this was an album that I don't think you had heard, had you? No, you had heard Animalistic before, hadn't you? You had reviewed it. So I think it was Chris, Will, and Simon that was the first time listeners. So tell us about why this was your second album. I mean, it's got to be good to get a second place from you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was the arrangements on it were amazing. The songs, the stories within were just phenomenal. Unfortunately, I really haven't had a time to have a good proper listen to all the albums again in their entirety on the top 10. But it was songs like On This Day I Fight, and it was I believe Wildfire as well was just, they just really rang true with me. You know, it's just got that power, that arrangement, the symphonic sound within it. Symphonic's not the right word, but multi-layered, and it just just goes tick, 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 tick for me. 100%.
Well, these are one of the mega. So, Paul, you also had Animalistic and Nordic Union as your second album, and these were what we term a mega band, weren't they? So, and one of the better ones.
Well, no, I don't think so. No, but the main thing about it, he had the singer has stage 4 cancer.
That's right. Yes, I remember that.
And you know, obviously, I've been around certain people who've had cancer and stuff over the last couple of years. They either give up or they go for it, and this person is particularly going for it. And there was that. However, as Ian has pointed out, he did have such a blend of symphonic, power metal. It added it all, and his songs could have been very, unlike other people that have suffered during COVID, could have been very depressing and angry, but he didn't. They were very melodic, very inspiring. Yeah, it was it the strongest album in the world? No, it kind of tailed off in the second half of it, but the songs that were on it really made up for it in the first half of the album. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. When I listened to it, as Trish has already mentioned, between second and fifth, any one of them could have been rearranged in a different order. But for me, when I reviewed everything again, it kind of was the second best album for me.
The word I was looking for was polyphonic, not symphonic.
Thanks for that, Slashy. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think Paul hit on the head on that. I think the first half of this album was sensational, and then it got a little bit generic in the second half of the album. But why it's good highly? I think a lot of people. Simon Gibbet is in his top 5. After that, I think a lot of people had it as their 6th or 7th favourite album. A lot of us have had it as number 6 or number 7, really, which it just gained a lot of points across the board. Absolutely terrific album, and well, I hope he survives somehow with a miracle cure and carries on producing music, because that is a phenomenal album. So congratulations to Nordic Union. Top 3 albums. Our top 3 albums we have left. And by the way, you said about getting to the Who later. You won't be, because they didn't make our top 10. By the way,
before you move on, Nige, because you said it was Will's first listen. I wanted to know what Will thought of it.
Was it Will's first listen?
It was. Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
I didn't hear it in the thing before. Yeah, I was really upset that I couldn't put it higher in my rankings, because it was such a fantastic album. It had a really good sound. The music, the vocals, everything was just phenomenal. But I couldn't put it higher up than any of the other ones that I'd already ranked, because I adored all the albums above it so much. And again, for me, my hardest votes were my sort of that 5th to 7th. Those 3 were the hardest ones for me to place, but it just couldn't get above those other ones. But I am so glad that I've heard this album, and I really want to be able to hear them more and hear them produce some more things, because they are something special.
Definitely one of the highlights of the year. That was a nice surprise, really. But okay, so our top 3 albums of the year then. So we are left with, in 3rd place, on our top 3 albums. So you've got to go say that this is going to be a great album, and 5 people had this in their top 4, not top 5, but top 4. So, which goes to say, and that is Hailstorm and Back from the Dead in 3rd place. So we have to start with the guy who put it on the top, which was Ian Slow/Review. This was your number 1 album, Slashy. Tell us why this was your number 1. You're on mute, Slashy, which normally would be a good thing, but on this show it's not a good thing.
This was just, there were a lot of albums that were similar, and I really had a problem discerning between them. But Hailstorm, just that vocal, I'm a sucker for a good strong female rock vocal, and that was amazing. But the thing that really set it out for me was the song Raise Your Horns. Raise Your Horns is just so anthemic and so different from everything else they do. And to have a song that stands out that's so different from everything else, which is equally as just amazing to listen to. It's an album that I have is on my regular playlist. It's got its own playlist. A few bands have that, and it's just great to have on the car. And I was really hoping it was going to come first. I am disappointed, like Will was with Sabaton and Dave was with Shinedown. I'm disappointed here because I really wanted us to play out and Raise Your Horns. I thought that was a fantastic way to play out the year. But obviously it's not the #1 album, so maybe not. But
it was close. It was only 3 points. It was 49 points, so really close.
Yeah.
I would say, Will, it was you didn't review this album, so it was the first time that you've done it, and it was but we all knew that you'd listened to the Hailstorm album anyway.
I think I probably listened to it more than anyone who was reviewing the album listened to it.
Yeah, I hadn't reviewed it, and of course you've just seen them live at against Afterlife.
I saw them live last week.
This is your third. You rated this your third, your top 3. So, but yeah, what was she like live? And you wish now that you put top.
Lizzie Hale is such an incredible vocalist, and hearing her singing live, her voice is only better live. The notes she can hold and the power in her tone as she's singing is truly mind blowing. And because I was initially, when I was trying to compile my top 10, my top 3 was the thing I was pretty set on. I could have moved one, between this and Blind Guardian, I could have moved those around initially. But hearing them play it live and hearing especially the songs from this album again, like Back from the Dead, that's one of the best opening songs that I've heard on an album for a long time. It really sets the tone for it. Really lets you know what it's going to be like. And I'm glad it's this high. It definitely.
Oh, it's a cracking album.
I don't think it deserved to be the album of the year because of how good everything was, but it definitely deserved to be this high up in the year because this was something special again.
It was a good. Dave, you also thought it was very special because you had this in third place as well, my friend.
Yeah, it was a great album. I mean, she's got an absolutely stunning voice. Again, it was one that instantly got played several times. I can't say enough about it. Definitely sort of a band that I will be sort of checking out a lot more of their back catalogue, and someone I would like to go and see if I get an opportunity at some point.
It's quite interesting because after you, both Chris and Simon are not here today, both had this as a 4th place album, and for me, I expected it to be in my top 5, but when I went up against it, I just found I think her voice on the album was phenomenal. But when and again, you're kind of picking holes a little bit, and I don't know what Paul and Trish thought about. I just felt it was actually quite samey through the album. It was still fantastic, don't get me wrong. But when I'm trying to split hairs about what I'd like, I just found her. I think the tempo of the album was very, very samey, unlike something like Five Finger Death Punch, which was greatly varied. And I suppose that I'm trying to pick holes in why it wouldn't get my top 5, but it was still a fantastic album. But that's kind of maybe why it didn't quite make my 5. I don't know about you, Paul.
I didn't even make the top 10, so I'm probably one of the reasons.
Oh, really? You didn't
this
get it in your top
finish
10?
higher.
Crikey. Right, okay.
No, and there's a couple of reasons why. Phenomenal singer, really, really phenomenal singer. And before I'd listened to the album, I'd heard her sing "Back from the Grave" unplugged. It's all stripped down and it's mainly her voice, and I was just looking so forward to this album, and it just didn't do anything for me really. It was bland and generic, and basically if she got a good manager, and I know her brother's part of the band as well, I'd boot half of the band off. I know she plays guitar, I get a proper guitarist to just liven it up. For me it was just too generic, which is a shame because she's got such a fantastic voice.
Awesome voice.
And she writes the songs as well, but it just wasn't strong enough. Not against Sabaton and the Civic War and so forth. Just didn't stand a chance.
Okay, right. We now come to our top 2 albums, which is very obvious. Going to be what was on top of our Hall of Fame, which was Volbeat and Sermons of the Mind, and the Pretender to the Throne, Visions of Atlantis, and Pirates. It's neck and neck. And let me tell you for transparency, we're going to go, before I reveal the winner, because I don't want it to be an anticlimax for the band that finishes in second place, we're going to kind of look at these albums now before we kind of reveal our kind of winner. But there's only 3 points in it. literally only 3 points with it. Now, it's interesting that Visions of Atlantis was the only album that had 2 top places, which was myself and Simon. We both rated this album number 1. Paul, you rated, no shock of shock, you rated Volbeat as your number 1 album of the year, but it also had 3 second places. I was in second place. Chris gave it second place. Dave gave it second place, and there was only a couple of second places for Visions, which was Trish and Will. So really, it was going to come down to kind of however kind of people vote. But Paul, talk to me about Volbeat and why Volbeat. Because it came very early in the year, didn't it? I think it was in our February show, and as a whole group of us going to watch Volbeat in literally 2 days' time. So it was like which is super exciting. So talk to me. Why did this album set apart from everything else?
Well, I hadn't heard them before, and they have been around for like 10 years or longer. But it's just his voice, the fact that they'd mixed it up with a Cthulhu theme, and the variation of the music. I just loved all the songs. It just traveled very well, and stuff like Shotgun Blues and Wait a Minute, My Girl, and so I could go on with a number of them. Are just absolutely, ones that I can imagine dancing around to in a concert. But I've listened to them on long journeys as well. Even Against Daughtry and stuff like that. They still stand out album of the year for me. So, and yeah, they had competition like Atlantis and Nordic Union and Sabaton as well. So yeah. But they're still number 1 for me this year.
Look, I echo all of that. I literally had to go. I couldn't. I listened to these albums twice, 3-4 times again and again and again. I couldn't split them for various different reasons. And then I went, if I was given a choice, the last album I would have to listen to on this world, what one would I listen to? And that's how I chose at the end. I couldn't split them for different reasons, but and the only reason I got there was a couple of tracks that would I skip a Volbeat track? Well, actually, there might be 1 or 2 that I might skip. I wouldn't skip any of the albums on Visions of Atlantis. Everyone takes me away to a place, and just her voice is just a phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal voice. But his is so addictive in a combination of between like Iron Maiden and Elvis Presley. It's a wonderful concoction, and both albums for me were absolutely sensational. Will, I'm going to ask you to speak on behalf of Simon as well, because obviously Simon's not here, but you obviously rated this as a symphonic power metal aficionado. This was your second place, Will.
I struggle to find words of how much I adored this album. I'd never heard Visions of Atlantis before, and just as I've said far too many times, I quite enjoy power metal, and I quite like pirates as a concept. But just every time you listen to any of the songs in here, it transports you to another world. The way they compose the songs, every instrument works in perfect harmony together. Her vocals, the male vocals as well, work in unison the whole time together, and there's something I can't comprehend how an album can be this good.
I mean, her voice is breathtaking, isn't it? I mean, and the good thing about it is, in my opinion, it's not cheesy either. A lot of power metal can get cheesy, and none of these songs are cheesy in a slightest. It's not about pirates. It's about the romantic version of the world that the pirates live in, rather than romanticising it. It's just
the concept of pirates rather than the story of pirates.
And it's really interesting. So because Trish, you obviously had not heard of Visions of Atlantis before, but this was also you were one of the people that give it your second favourite album. What did this say to you?
I mean, it's power metal. Well said.
Is it power metal or is it symphonic metal? I don't know.
Really. Symphonic metal
it's metal.
technically
I just loved it. I just loved it.
Yeah, technically, it's a subgenre of power metal, symphonic metal. So, yes.
So I'm going to leave Slashy. Slashy, I'm going to leave to last because his was very interesting. But we're going to come to Dave first of all. Then, so Dave, you rated this. You obviously come into the concert with this. This was your number 2 album. What made Shinedown a better album than Volbeat? Because you've been raving about Volbeat all year. I mean, really, what I mean, I thought this was going to be your number 1.
It was going to be my number 1, and to be honest with you, if I knew it was going to be this close, I'd have put it as my number 1. But I knew Shinedown probably wasn't going to get as many marks, so I just put it at number 1 just to try and help it along a little.
So Dave, you're saying here, Dave, is you're getting a bit nervous now because you could have cost your vote could have cost it.
Well, I'm 2 ends of the scales because I had Vision of Atlantis at number 10. Though I will say I really did enjoy the album. It's just one that I think I'm going to need more time with, and unfortunately didn't have the time to go through it enough for it to really sink in and to absorb it all. It is really, really, really good though. I do quite like the themes, and as you say, the vocals are absolutely stunning. And for me to say that about any sort of power metal album is, incredible. To be fair. But yeah, as I say, I'm a bit sort of nervous now. I would thought Volbeat was going to walk it, to be honest. I didn't think it was going to be this close.
Very close, Dave. So, Slash, I'm going to come to you because yours was really interesting because you had not heard either of these albums, and both of them made your top 5. One was 3rd, one was 4th. We won't reveal which was which for now, but interesting that you hadn't heard both of these albums, and interestingly, they were both in your top 4 and are vying for that top spot. What was your? Let's start with Volbeat then, because I think originally when you rung me, you said, "Oh, I should give Volbeat another listen," because you got the first time you listen to Volbeat, you go, "What the hell is that?" And then you listen to it again, and you go, "Wow, that's amazing." But tell us your thoughts.
So I'm going to do the politician thing, and I'm going to answer your question by talking about something completely different from what you've directly asked me.
Oh, that's unusual for you.
And that is that my top 5, 4 of the bands in my top 5 were albums I hadn't listened to.
It's correct, yes. I told you were in for a treat, didn't I?
Yeah, absolutely. You did, definitely, and boy, what a treat. And I think you're right with Volbeat. Once I listened to the proper version, rather than the extended, it did make a difference, but not to where I placed it. So I'm the top 5. I think maybe on a different next month they could be slightly different, but they were so close. It was like, you get a real tight race, and you get the runners. And you get 4 of them crossing the line almost at the same time, and then you get, the stragglers behind crossing 2 or 3 seconds later. That was what my top 10 looked like. So, So Volbeat, amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely, just blew my mind completely. It was just when you put an album on and you just get that wall of noise coming at you, tune after tune after tune, and I got those with all of the albums from my top 5, but then it comes down to when I look at the album, which song titles stick out and I go, yeah, I like that song. Which do you not remember? And that's kind of how I discern between the top 5.
Well, it was very interesting when you said about Battle Beast, and always thought about the genre, and I was saying about, about power metal not being in there. I'm going, hold on a minute, Sabaton's power metal, Civil War's power metal, and you've not listened to Vision yet, which for me, anyway. Okay, so Paul, you actually, I don't think you're going to mind too much because you also had Vision, Paul, in your top 5 as well. In fact, in your top 3, Vision of Atlantis was your 3rd place album.
Yep, and I already said why as well. Yeah.
So,
an excellent album. It really was.
Oh, it's an absolutely terrific.
And at the beginning of the year, I didn't think bands like Sabaton and Visions of Atlantis would be in my top 5, but yeah, they were. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Will. Oh no, absolutely. Thanks, Will. And in fairness, I think Simon introduced me to Symphonic Metal was with a band called Camelot from 2008, and I was going, "Oh, I kind of like this sound if it's done really well," and listened to a couple of others. Now, for the record, I've gone back and listened to both the back catalogues of Volbeat and Vision, and the 2019 Vision album, Wanderers, is a poor imitation. You can see where they were going, and that first stab at this, but it would have got a 3 in comparison to Vision, which got a 5. But you listen to the back catalogue of Volbeat, and it is sensational. Their level of stuff has gone through. So let's hope Vision can kind of do that.
I think. Can I just add? I didn't mention about Visions of Atlantis. They were amazing. I think had they written the song "Raise Your Horns," that would be my number one, without a shadow of that. Will has. I've been long into power metal and this symphonic thing. I love Nightwish. Went to see them a couple of weeks ago. If you love that amazing female belt, they were fantastic, amazing. But Will has been a guide for me too in discerning things. I'd love to love Sabaton more than I do, but I just struggle with it. But
you'll learn with time. Don't worry, my friend.
I think so.
I do find it quite interesting though that for me personally, our top 2 albums right now are, one of them was my second favourite, and the other in my mind, very generously put it in 8th place. Which I love this show.
I know, right? Well, it is. Look, it's called Musical People and Journeys for a reason. That we thought, when we first started this, we weren't really aficionados of all sort of genres of metal, and we're kind of learning that, and we're developing. And what's interesting in terms of our taste in music, I mean. You're right. Would Dave have ever gone and put Visions in his top 10 as a power metal? Never even imagined it. Would we have listened and exposed ourselves to a rock artist who does seem to be the love child of Iron Maiden and Elvis Presley, and love him and going to see him in concert? No. So it's definitely been an involvement for all of us, and it's been 126 albums, guys. Has been a phenomenal. Thank you very much for sharing the journey with me, and thank you very much for committing to next year's journey as well, really, which would be phenomenal. But and you know what? I mean, Volbeat, all Visions, both phenomenal albums, but. There can only be one. There can only be one winner of the Musical People's Album of the Year. Dave's crossing his fingers on that score, and there was 3 points between them. So there we go, and that close. So would you like me to now put you out your misery and tell you the Album of the Year?
Yeah.
Okay. So we go. Our Album of the Year for 2022 goes to Visions of Atlantis and Pirates by 3 points. So congratulations to them.
Just out of curiosity, had I given it top spot?
No,
space,
no, 2
it
points
wouldn't have made a
difference.
difference.
It was 2 points difference, so it would have been 1 point in it. That's why I've said it's very interesting about Slashy's votes, because if you had given Volbeat and then he had switched his votes around, because I think he gave Visions 3rd and Volbeat 4th. Would have made a difference. Paul's disappointed. So yeah, I mean,
it's Paul disappointed,
and
with
I had it ready to celebrate with as well.
Is Paul disappointed because with the result, or did he accidentally turn around and look behind him?
I don't know, really. Look, Visions. Me and Simon.
I even think Chris will have got off his answer in disgust.
He would have done.
You talk about honourable mentions. I want to give that an honourable mention. I want to applaud Dave. There's fine work.
Yeah, fine work on that score. But I reckon, Visions, both me and Simon first, Trish and Will second, Paul and Ian both third. So, and then Volbeat, Paul first, myself, Chris, Dave second, Trish and Ian fourth. there wasn't much really to be between the two albums. Both are absolutely terrific albums, but it just goes to show that the taste in music. You know, we have power metal fans, but also put Volbeat just in their top 10 who wouldn't normally vote them. The non-power metal fans put Visions. It was an acceptable power metal band. Both Chris and Dave had it in the lower end of the spectrum from that perspective as well. So I'm gutted that they haven't come for tour. To be honest with you, they were here in London for like an hour. It was an hour's tour late at night in London, and me and Will and Simon were looking to go, and it was just like, you know what? They're not coming on till 10. They're only from 10 till 11. And I've seen their gigs live in Europe, and they're doing a big tour in the US at the minute. And they look phenomenal live as well. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely phenomenal live. But you know, but in fairness though, if I had to, and I mentioned the back catalogue, if I had to go and pick a band today, I would go and I'm not to say that because I'm watching them in 2 days' time, but I would 100% go to watch Volbeat because their back catalogue is far stronger as a kind of band from that side of things as well.
Interesting story about Volbeat. It was the last one that I listened to on the show that we reviewed it for, because I believed that I had heard the band before, and I was thinking, and I'm still not sure who I was actually thinking of, but I was thinking of another band completely, and I was like, I don't want to listen to that shit. So I left it to last on purpose, and then I listened to it and went, okay, this isn't the band I thought it was. This is incredible.
It was, isn't it? And you know, and the thing is, the difference between Volbeat, they're both growers, aren't they? But for different reasons. Because Volbeat, you go, what the hell was that? This is nuts. What is this? You know? And then you listen to it again, you go, my God, actually, that's really good. And then, but the Visions just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows and grows and just gets better and better.
Yeah,
and better.
I mean, it's going to be one I go back to. I mean, I had it in 10th place, but I feel like if give me a month and it'd probably be higher than that aneway. So I'm not disappointed too much.
And so I think it's only fair that we just kind of I just wanted to highlight the band. So who are Vision Atlantis? Well, they're on the Napalm Records label. The lead singer is Clementine Delaunay. Lead vocals also is the guy called Michel Gottolini, and then drums Thomas Fraser, guitar Christian Dusha, and bass Herbert Gloss. The three Austrians with an Italian and a French lead singers. Congratulations, guys! I will send this video to Napalm Records. Let's see. Hope you see it. But congratulations, you have won the coveted award of the Musical People and Journeys Album of the Year. Though some of our panel might be slightly disappointed, I think overall everybody will agree that it is a phenomenal album. So, Trish, are you happy with that result, or not what you expected?
I'm happy with that result.
Cool, excellent. It was really good. Well, both of those were in your top 5 as well, weren't they? So you you have Volbeat as 4th and Vision's 2nd. There we go. But and ultimately you've got to go, well, if you'd done it traditional way and you know your top album gets 1 vote, then Visions would have won because it had two number 1 votes. So which was myself and Simon. So but anyway, there we go. Very exciting show. Very exciting show, guys. Congratulations, Good Vision, and keep on rocking. Tune in. We're going to change our format for next year. We're going to still review the same amount of albums, but we're going to do 2 album shows, and we're going to have versus. So you can tune in for our next show, which will be Disturbed versus Nickelback albums, and carry on listening. Hope you please like and subscribe to the show, and tune in again. Thanks to my wonderful panel for all your hard work and commitment through the year. Really appreciated it.
Can I say something?
Sure.
To round off the end of the year show.
I was going to say. I was about to say. Any last messages you guys would like to do? Trish, let's start with you then.
Okay. So, I would like to thank Nigel for all the albums you brought to the table this year for us to review, introducing us to new styles of music, bands we perhaps wouldn't listen to, and now some of us may love, and continue with them on their journey, and obviously vice versa. But most of all, the podcast team. Actually, no, we are more than a podcast team. We are all close friends. The fun, laughter, and sharing our views and opinions and respecting each other's views. We have definitely grown together and shared more this year by experiencing concerts together and making memories, which has been the best. Thank you, Nigel, for allowing us to share this musical journey with you and for coordinating it. 2022 has been brilliant, but I can't wait to see what 2023 brings us in music and more memories to be made. Love, Rock Chick Trish.
Well said, Trish. Well said. Does anybody want to add to that? Paul?
I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and has a rocky New Year. And yeah, I'm just sad that some of my fellow panelists are deluded, misunderstood people.
You can't just notice this now.
However, come next week, I'll be with a sitting a couple of members watching Volbeat, and I'll know that I was right and the rest were wrong. I'm not a poor loser, but there we are.
Ian?
Well, I'd like to finish in a unique style. Who saw that? We've listened to albums throughout the year. Some of us drink soft drinks. Some of us drink beer. We've been to gigs. We've bought some records. We've had a journey. I don't know what rhymes with records. But one thing is true. We'll always be here. And I'm looking forward to coming back next year. Rock on, dudes!
Dave?
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, there's been many an album we've listened to this year that I would have never have picked up, that I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's been a great experience, highlight of the month, got to say, and it's been nice to meet you all as well. Didn't know any of you beforehand, only knew Chris, which, you know,
Absolutely.
it is what it is, isn't it, really?
Will, last words from young power metal aficionado Will.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say as well, obviously I joined into the rock podcast significantly later than everyone else here, and it has been a real pleasure being able to discover all these new albums. As much as I may have hated a lot, I also adored so many things that I'd never heard before and I wouldn't have heard before. And I can't wait till next year for all of our musical knowledge and horizons to be expanded even more.
You know what, and I just want to say a big thank you to Chris and Simon. Even though they're not here, they are so committed to this podcast in terms of putting the effort in and listening to the albums. You know, I've been talking to Simon all week. He is going to be absolutely gutted that he had technical issues today and couldn't join us, because he was so looking forward to this show, so looking forward to it. But thank you very much to Simon and to Chris for putting the effort in and keep reviewing the albums. And who knows, maybe we'll have a new face in the new year, but we'll see. But for now, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for liking and subscribing, and thank you very much. And congratulations one last time to the Vision of Atlantis guys. Congratulations, and look forward to seeing you Volbeat in a couple of days' time. Thanks everybody, goodbye, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.